Chapter 20. In the Himalayan Tirthas. Tirthas, or the holy pilgrimages, provide the inspiration to enable one to cross over from worldly engagement to liberation. It has been said of a remarkable scientist that when he saw his table, he saw only a mass of ions and electrons and wavelengths, and not the familiar wooden table as seen by others. Likewise, the great spiritual personalities see Brahman, the absolute pure consciousness, everywhere, vibrating through everything in the universe. When they wake up to their superconscious state, they live and love and have their being in the infinite. This is true in all the stages of their sadhana. And even when they live in the life of a wandering monk with a begging bowl in one hand and a kamandalu in the other, visiting holy places, they must not be reckoned as ordinary pilgrims. They go to the holy places with their mind and heart attuned to the living presence of God. And as they look around, their vision goes beyond the surface, and they see and feel much more than ordinary pilgrims. Their eyes see not merely idols, but ideals. It is not the externality that matters with them. Religion being the very breath of their being, their mind is always in union with the Supreme Self. As we accompany our subject in his sojourn to the most sacred pilgrimages in the heart of the snow-capped Himalayas, we find him happy and peaceful from the moment he left Jairambati. The solitude, the villages and the towns and shrines, and the meeting with new people, hardships of continuous travel, no doubt delighted Kali Tapasi. But what delighted him more than anything else was the feeling of the infinite in and around him. As he traveled on foot from place to place, he gathered varied and higher experiences. So his 10 years pilgrimage was in reality a pilgrimage of the soul for intimate realization of the Absolute. It was truly tapas, pure and simple, the deepest austerities. One morning, they bade farewell to the sadhus of Rishikesh and started for Lakshman Jula. In those days, it was sort of a hanging bridge made of rope and bamboo, and the Jula is named as such after the name of Lakshman, the illustrious brother of Sri Ramachandra. And there is a temple of Lakshmanji just by the side of it, where pilgrims offer their worship to the deity before crossing the bridge. Below the bridge, the Ganges flows in a terrific rush. It was a risky job to cross the bridge, for through crossing and recrossing it, the pilgrims felt giddiness as the bridge swayed. The conditions, however, have changed since then, and the journey to Kedarnath and Badrinarayan is no longer so difficult or arduous as it was a century before. Crossing 4 miles on foot from Rishikesh, the monks arrived near the temple of Lakshmanji, where they visited the idol and then carefully began to cross the hanging bridge. There were some pilgrims before and behind them. The way to Badrinarayan lay just on the other end of the bridge, with deep forest on both sides of it. As Swami Abhedananda writes, "Thus commenced our journey towards Rajak Ashram, with the name of the Master on our lips. We were absolutely penniless. We saw the Ganges flowing at a little distance by the side of the road, with her course towards Devaprayag. There were only huge boulders and jungle full of trees on both sides of the road. Down the slope, the Ganges was flowing in murmuring sound, while the chirpings of the birds were heard from the forest. There were inns at 10 to 15-mile intervals, which were resting places for the pilgrims. They would halt there at noon and evening for food and spend their nights in rest. Cooking materials and utensils were available, there including fuels for the pilgrims to cook something for those that wanted to. As they were penniless, they had no other means than to beg, and they passed their nights on the wayside, spreading the blankets on the ground. Proceeding thus up and down, they crossed 35 miles and reached Vasgat, where they spent the night as before. Since they were accustomed to take food once a day, there was no need of looking out for food in the night. It is said that Vyasadeva did tapas at this place, and hence it is called Vyasagat. The next morning, they started for Divan Prayag, which lay at a distance of 9 miles from Vasgat. It is a confluence of two rivers, the Ganges and the Alaknanda, and as such, it is regarded by the pilgrims as a very holy place. It is from this point that the Ganges takes her course towards Gangotri, and beyond that is located the source of the river which is known as Gomukh, and it is from this Gomukh that the Ganges rises and flows towards Devaprayag, where she merges with the Alaknanda. The way to Gangotri lay by the side of the Ganges. Swami Abhedananda writes, and we had decided earlier that at first we would visit Bhadrak Ashram and Kedarnath, and then would proceed to Gangotri via Triju Narayan. So we had our oblation in the holy waters of the confluence and obtained our noontime food by begging from fellow pilgrims. It is said that the gods used to perform their tapas here. The beauty of the Himalayas is extremely fascinating here. 18 miles up Devaprayag, there is an ancient temple known as Bilvakashwara. It's a Shiva temple, which they visited. The entire surrounding looked charmingly beautiful on account of the green foliage on the hilltop. Next, they came to Rudraprayag, which is also a confluence of two rivers, the Madakini and the Alaknanda. Here they bathed and worshipped at the temple of Rudrashwara Shiva, which was nearby. And the road has bifurcated in two directions, one going towards Bhadrak Ashrama via Karnaprayag by the side of the Alaknanda River, while the other towards Kedarnath via the Gupta Kasi by the side of Mandakini. One of the notable holy places in this locality is Agastya Yamuni, which is 7 miles up Rudraprayaga on the way to Kedarnath. The legend is that the famous hermit Agastya Muni performed great tapas at this place, and hence the place is associated with his memory. The pilgrimage of Agastya Muni lay at a distance of 13 miles from Gupta Kashi, where there is a temple of Viveshwara and Annapurna, and the deity is Ardha Nariswara, that is, half god, half goddess. Besides, there is another beautiful spot known as Manikarnika, where one notices the flow of the Gomukhi and also the tank. As Swami Abhedananda writes, here we had our bath, and we also visited the deity. The surroundings of this temple on the lonely hill were peaceful beyond description. As we walked 3 miles up from Gupta Kashi, we found 2 springs, one hot and the other cold. Here the pilgrims sometimes perform the offerings to the memories of the dead. The next important place on our journey to Badrinath was Ukimath, which seemed to us to be a small but prosperous hill town and very well laid out. It has a post office, a police station, and for the middle class, a school, one hospital, a dharamsala for pilgrims, a market, and one sadavrata, or charitable store. The place is called as such after the name of Usha, the daughter of King Vana, and many infer it that in the Puranic or mythological age, the capital of King Vana was situated here. The love story of Usha and Aniruddha has been described in the Purana. The Mohant or Rawal of Kedarnath mostly resides at the Ukamuth. The doors of Kedarnath at the temple are thrown open on the day of the Akshaya Tritiya in the month of Vaisakha, and the temple remains open for pilgrims till the Dipanvita festival in the month of Kartik. The Mohant goes there at that time and remains there for some time. His description of the Ukamuth and the rest of the journey is not only interesting but full of information, which is possible only on the part of a keen observer like Swami Abhedananda. As a pilgrim, we find him not only devoted but equally also observant. His was an inquisitive mind, and he had also observing eyes. Thus the scenery and surroundings meant to him as much as the historical and mythological aspects of each in every place visited by him. A man of profound spirituality, he was bent upon discovering the soul of India, and this might be the driving force behind each and every step of his eventful pilgrimage. Indeed, the story of Swami Abhedananda's 10-year solitary wanderings through India is the story of his inward spiritual experiences, which is difficult for a layman to fully comprehend. Even in its outward aspect, it has a lesson for us. Sometimes living in complete isolation and want, sometimes sharing the meals of bhikshas of the destitute villagers, sometimes being entertained by the princes and pandits. The Swami strode the length and breadth of his country, plumbing the life of the people to its depths, just as his great spiritual brother, Swami Vivekananda, did. If the wanderings therefore meant for him spiritual progress, it nonetheless meant expansion of his heart. Thus, as one follows his itinerary, one is really amazed to see in him the image of a true pilgrim in the time-honored sense of the term. The closing years of the 19th century in India witnessed two great wandering monks, Swami Vivekananda and Swami Abhedananda, who, as they went barefooted from one place to another, saw the whole of India, her past, present, and future, her centuries of greatness, and also her centuries of degradation. And it was during their wandering life that both of these Swamis realized that India's only hope was a restatement of the lost spiritual culture of the ancient rishis. And this characterized in a remarkable degree their mind and spirit before they appeared on the world stage at the end of their phenomenal pilgrimage. The next phase of their journey, as described by Swami Abhedananda himself, began from Tuganath, and after crossing several miles uphill and down and stopping at several wayside inns for food and rest, they arrived at Joshimath. As he wrote, "As we walked on, we fell in conversation with fellow pilgrims, which relieved to some extent the monotony and hardships of the journey. Gradually, we reached Joshimath, which had a big rosary. A large number of magnificent roses in full blossom attracted my eyes. During the winter days, when the temple at Badranath remains closed on account of heavy snowfall, the worship of the deity is carried on here, and the chief priest then resides here for a pretty long time. The Joshimath was founded by Shankara, and it is also known as Yotir Muth. Badranath is 19 miles from this place. We stayed for one night here, and as I looked at an idol inside the muth, depicting Shankaracharya in his childhood days, I was extremely happy. 2 miles below Joshimath lay Vishnu Prayag, and I was surprised beyond degree to look at some portion of the snow-clad Kailash mountain, which was visible from here. The entire track to our destination was covered with snow, and we had no shoes. This is why we were experiencing great difficulty initially as we trudged on. But they were true sannyasins, and their hardship of the pilgrimage meant nothing to them. By this time, they have become somewhat accustomed to it, so they could easily walk barefooted in the snow-covered mountainous road. As soon as they caught sight of the peak of the holy temple, their joy knew no bounds, and all the hardships of the journey were forgotten. Their long-cherished hope was now fulfilled. Elated with joy, they shouted, saying, "Glory to Brandashvisha! Hail Brandavisha!" The surroundings of the place seemed to them holy and charming. As Swami Abhedananda wrote, "Two lofty mountains on both sides of the temple touched the sky, one of them named Nara and the other Narayan. The legend is that both man and God, Nara and Narayan, performed austere tapas in these mountains, and hence the name of the mountains is their sacred memory. There is a hot spring here where the pilgrims get themselves refreshed by having their bath. Myself and Tulsi spent only 3 days and 3 nights at Vajrak Ashram, and every day we used to worship the deity and get his prasad, as usual once a day by begging, with which we satisfied our hunger. At a little distance upwards there is a spot known as Vasguha, or the cave of the famous Rishi Vedavyasa, who performed here tapas. But since the place remained totally covered with snow during the winter, it was difficult for the pilgrims to go there. Almost on top of the cave there is a big waterfall known as Vasudhara, the 1,000-branched falls. The waters of this gigantic falls is noticed with awe and astonishment, falling in terrific current on a huge stone, split in 1,000 directions, spreading far and wide. The terrific sound of the falls disturbed, as it were, the peace of the surrounding place. Many sadhus and pilgrims take their bath in that icy cold water. We, however, could not do so. We took out some water and had it sprinkled on our head. A zigzag road lay beside this waterfall, which leads to Manasarova. When one of our brother monks, Gangadhar, that is Swami Abhedananda, went to Tibet, he went there by this road.